is now called to order at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, June 28th of 2023. This hearing is being held as required by the provisions of Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws of the Commonwealth, an act relative to the protection of the wetlands, as most recently amended. Notice of the time and place of this hearing was published in the Fairhaven Neighborhood News on June 22nd of 2023. It was also posted in the town clerk's office. Persons wishing to be heard will be called in the following order, and I need to let you all know this is being broadcast live, so behave yourselves. And if your phones are turned up loud, would you turn them down, please, so that it doesn't get picked up on the TV. All right, first order of business, minutes for approval for the April 12th meeting. So I've reviewed those. I had no changes to recommend. I don't know if anybody
They look
else.
good to me.
Okay, you want to make a motion to accept?
Make a motion to accept as submitted.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous, thank you. Meeting mail, we got a couple of
I
things.
gave you a few.
Yeah, so we'll start with the certified letter that our town administrator received from Woodard and Curran. And the RE on this is notification of availability of final Phase 2 comprehensive site assessment addendum / Resource Conservation and Recovery Act Facility Investigation Addendum Report, former ball plant 1 here in town. You get the tracking number. This letter is sent to you to fulfill the public notification requirements established by the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. In accordance with the public notification requirements, Woodard and Curran is notifying you on behalf of the Acushnet Company that final Phase 2 comprehensive site assessment addendum report has been prepared. So that's just a courtesy. We have to send this letter to you, letting you know that we're doing it. And, you know, just letting us know that there's cleanup happening and there's PCB still out there.
And there's a
Just-
report available if anyone wants to
Yeah,
request it.
yeah. And that's sent by Andrea Egan from, she's the project manager for Woodard and Curran, and also Lisa Campy, senior principal at Woodard and Curran. That was also sent to Acushnet Board of Health, Mass DEP, and Acushnet Company, Director of Regional Company Affairs. And there's been a couple of letters that have been sent regarding to an item coming up soon, and if there's nothing else, I think we'll get on with it. Okay, so old business, I need a motion to reopen a public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Okay, so, before I do that, I should announce we have 3 new members here tonight. Jim Souza, Christian D'Souza, Douglas Thomas, and then your long-standing veteran members here, Rick Phillo, Vice Chair, Bob Rocha, Eddie Pelletier, Ryan Resendes. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as I mentioned at the last meeting, I'd like to thank both Evelyn Boulay and Rick Pimentel for their years of service on this commission. We appreciate everything that they've done for us. So, so we continued public hearing, a notice of intent, Sincarfa Park Drive, LLC, Lambert Street, map 17, lot 13, file number is SE001-0582. Notice of intent was filed by Sincarfa Park Drive, LLC, for property located at Lambert Street, map 17, lot 13. The applicant proposes development of an access road with proposed wetland impact and associated replication to access the Park Drive solar project. This is an alternative access road. The applicant is represented by Robert Bukowski of Weston and Simpson Engineers Incorporated. Plan name is Proposed Lambert Street Access Road Site Plans, and that's dated May 9 of 2023. We're going to continue this to the July 12th meeting due to a lack of quorum. There's something in this state called the Mullen Rule that applies to members of any board and their attendance at meetings on any topic. And we've had people miss meetings, we've had people resign, so we don't have enough people on the commission that have attended enough of the meetings related to that project to be able to vote on it. So what we're going to do is at our next site visit, July 8th, the new commission members will join us at the site visit. That will bring them up to speed, and then they'll all be able to vote. That'll help us move along. Think I missed any basics of the Mullen Rule?
It'll be the site visit, presentation by the engineer.
Yeah.
Then peer reviews that have been done will kick in,
Mhm.
and then we'll have enough people that can vote. Same with Deep Brook, same exact situation.
Right. So, any questions on that? I know most of you are not here for that anyway. In that case, I will entertain a motion to continue until July 12th.
For more information.
For more information. Yeah. So that's a motion from Everett. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Continue to July 12th. New business, I need a motion to open a public hearing, please.
Motion to open.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, notice of intent, New Bedford Reservoir Lakes 1, 2, 3, and 4, map 4, lot 49, and map 19, lot 32. File number is SE001-0583. A notice of intent was filed by Jamie Kelly, town of Acushnet, for property located at the New Bedford Reservoir, Lakes 1, 2, 3, and 4. The applicant proposes to control nuisance and invasive plant growth utilizing regular monitoring and registered aquatic herbicides. The applicant is represented by Andrew Felter of Solitude Lake Management. Plan name is New Bedford Reservoir, dated April 5 of 2023. This public hearing will be continued for more information after the presentation by the project engineer. I know there's others going to speak on it. Pat, so who do we want to have speak first?
Engineer?
Okay, good. So, engineer, somebody
Or
from
Solitude, somebody from Solitude?
He's trying to find,
A place to
I think
put
he's a little lost right now.
Do you want to move on to the next item? And give him a chance to get here?
No.
Yeah.
Let me go outside and see if I can find him.
Okay, yeah, hang on a minute.
Okay, we'll wait a moment. Because it's the one thing everybody that's running a TV program hates, dead air.
Yes.
I could sing, but I won't.
I dance.
Hmm?
Do that.
No one wants to see that either.
No, you don't.
No, the old joke, yeah, sing 10 or 12 miles away so nobody can hear you. Sing solo, they can't hear you.
Next to a window and I'll help you out.
That's only in Russia.
Yeah, many stories. Okay, I'm good. Copy of this.
The natural heritage.
Conservation, this.
The agenda?
Yes.
Oh, I don't have
I think
anything.
it's fine.
Just look. Or just, look on, yeah, Heidi can look on, writing notes. So,
You found it?
perfect timing, we're ready for a presentation, if you're ready to give a presentation.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and there's a camera behind you, there's a camera here, so you can use the easel as presented there if you need it. Floor is yours.
You guys have all the papers too? The maps and everything?
You've seen them electronically, certainly.
All right, so I'll make this brief.
Do you have any full-size plans to show the audience? Or?
No, I don't. So we're doing we want to do a treatment at the New Bedford Reservoir.
1 second, can you identify yourself?
Yes.
Just so-
Oh, yeah. I'm Andrew Felter. I'm a project manager at Solitude Lake Management. I oversee all Connecticut projects and Rhode Island projects, and now a few Massachusetts projects as well. So I've been working for Solitude for about 4 years now. Started working with them while I was in college, and once I graduated, they offered me a job. So yeah, as far as this project, we would like to treat for invasive weeds at the New Bedford Reservoir in town of Acushnet. The two target weeds would be fanwort and milfoil, as well as a few water lily patches. These plants are all treated differently with different pesticides, specifically herbicides. So we would like to use a combination of 3 herbicides to address all 3 different plants. For fanwort, we would like to use an herbicide called flumioxazin. Common or trade name would be Flumigard. This is the only water restriction for this would be a 5-day irrigation restriction. We know that there's cranberry farmers nearby. We're going to have to work with them, let them know when to keep their water off and when not to use the water from the New Bedford Reservoir. The second herbicide we would like to use is Diquat. Trade name is Tribune. This would be used for the milfoil. These are both submersed contact herbicides. our plan would be a yearly or an annual treatment to keep on top of these invasive weeds. And then the third herbicide would be glyphosate. That would be used for the water lilies. These are all contact herbicides, and they would be used annually. So, yeah, I guess that's the main overview for our plan. I know that you guys have a lot of questions.
Can you tell me about the first herbicide that you mentioned?
Yeah, so flumioxazin or Flumigard, that is a contact herbicide. The only restriction, 5-day irrigation restriction. It's used for the fanwort, and it's also used, it pretty much kills any pond weeds.
And reportable concentrations, detection limits, what are we dealing with?
So we're gonna have to keep a concentration of 17 ounces per acre foot, or 100 parts per million. And that, I mean, that's gonna be all done before we do any treatments there. We're gonna map that out.
And how will you know, once you've applied the treatment, that you haven't exceeded or reached your 100 parts per million? How do you?
We can test the water after we're done the treatment. We would go back about 2 weeks later, test the water, see how many parts per million that herbicide's still left over in the water.
Okay.
Is 2 weeks a standard length of time to wait?
Yeah, usually 2
So,
weeks.
for me, it would need to be a little firmer than, maybe in a few weeks. We need to see a schedule of
Oh, yeah,
when that
definitely.
testing is going to be done, where the samples will be taken, a sampling plan, so that we know that you get a representative sample around the pond.
Yeah.
Do you take them in multiple spots or just one spot?
Multiple spots, yeah. We would usually take, I would like to say, at least 5 samples, one in the north end, south, east, and west, and then one in the middle of the pond. But depending on how big each pond is, we're going to have to do more than that, probably.
And what's the turnaround time on the analytical?
Say it again?
Is there standard turnaround time on the analytical from the laboratory? Is it
Yeah, I would
2-week turnaround,
say
or-
it would be about less than a month turnaround. I would say anywhere between 1 week and 1 month.
How long can the sample be preserved?
For the herbicide, it can be preserved. As long as you keep it cold, it can be preserved for a while. I would say maybe even 2 weeks.
Do you have any information on that, on the whole time?
No, I don't, but I can get that to you.
That's all important information, that there's an exact sampling plan, recommended locations that are approved, chain of custody forms that come back to the town when the samples are taken, possibly split samples, so that the town doesn't like a result you get, we can run that sample and see if we come up with the same results.
Yeah.
Are any of these in the parts per billion range that you're using?
Parts per billion, no. No, parts per million.
Because I see that the Procella COR says less than 10 parts
yes.
per billion.
That's Procellicor. That's a different herbicide. It's a lot more expensive. We actually prefer using Procellicor, but we doubt that we'll be using it for this treatment. That's measured in parts per billion.
Okay. What laboratory do you use?
In Connecticut, I use Northeast Laboratories, but for Massachusetts, I would have to ask one of our senior project managers about
Okay,
that.
so we need to know what laboratory and see their certifications as far as, what they're allowed to analyze for, what detection levels they can reach. And reading some of this information on the herbicides, some of them says that it may be okay for use in aquatic places. It doesn't say that it is. It says that it may be.
Which ones say that?
I actually don't have the piece of paper in front of me. I looked at so many pieces of paper today. I don't have it. But, and then, as we know, as chemicals break down, they turn into other chemicals. So I'm wondering if there's been any research done on what happens to the Procella a year later, Is it cumulative if you do this multiple times, if you treat the pond 1, 2, 3 times? Does it dissolve, does it settle on the bottom, all of these things. Those are all important, all important information. Have we seen the monitoring plan? I'm looking at the list of conditions from Natural Heritage. Have you seen this document?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Okay, so they give you a list of conditions, and number 3 says that prior to use of the submitted herbicide products, an herbicide monitoring plan shall be submitted for division review and approval that can monitor and demonstrate that the products therein remain within the above limits. So as they degrade, they stay what they are. That's something that we would want to see before you got, or that's something I would advise the commission to want to see before you got any final approval on this, is that you've reached an agreement with Natural Heritage and provided a plan, and a plan of how you're going to follow their list of conditions and make sure that if you use contractors or whatever, that there's no sad stories.
Understood,
Down the
yeah.
line. There's been a lot of people in our office, a lot of people concerned about this. The conservation agent from the city of New Bedford's here today. He sent us a list of their concerns. Speaking with them on the phone today, they're in favor of the project. They just want to make sure that the project's done properly and doesn't have any effects, later on down the line.
Understood, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So I have a question. What would be the optimal time of year to do a treatment plan such as this?
That's a good question. So, as you know, we're treating these, or we'd like to treat these 2 different aquatic plants. The milfoil and the fanwort are 2 invasive weeds that we'd like to address. Typically, we treat for milfoil, the most optimal time is sometime in June, and fanwort we almost always treat for in July.
Okay.
So these would be potentially 2 different treatment dates.
Okay. And the reason why I asked that and picked up on that is because you had expressed for this to work properly was to be able to keep that water cold. We're not even into summer yet. It's a small body of water. I don't know the actual temperature that water gets at. Has there been a study done on that to actually even begin something like this in this body of water if the conditions need to be cold? Is there anything factual?
Not that I've seen, I don't have any data on the water temperatures.
I think to build on that is I fly single engine planes and we have a go, no go thing. When I'm taking off, I'm either gonna go or I'm not. So is there a go, no go scenario here for, as Doug just said, water temperatures and other conditions that Natural Heritage has spelled out? So I think that should be an important part of your plan, is some confirmation that before this work starts that we are meeting all of the things we need to make it work and be successful. And that it's not a whoops later on down the line.
Sure, yeah, understood, yeah.
Yeah, Doug, I think what he was referring to with a lab.
Yeah,
Water
preserving,
samples, keeping them
yeah,
cold.
preserving the samples.
But getting back to the timing thing,
It goes beyond that.
the letter received from Division of Marine Fisheries, they say no in-water work should take place between March 15 and June 30, because of the fact that you've got river herring, you've got blueback, alewives, and then you've got American eels, which have the opposite breeding pattern, but they all require transiting between freshwater and saltwater. And DMF's comment here was no in-water work taking place between March 15 and June 30. So you said it was milfoil you would treat first, typically?
Typically, I treat for milfoil in June, but there are plenty of scenarios where we treat for it in July, and it's also very successful. The only reason I like to do it in June is it just is a month earlier to get the invasive weed out of the system and allows native plants to grow a month earlier. So that's just our preference.
Yeah, and I've seen how fast that stuff grows.
And when do you treat for the fan wart?
Fanwort is almost always treated for in July, and sometimes even in early August.
Can we hold off on the questions from the audience, because it needs to be at the podium for our minutes and to be on the video?
Okay.
If you could just wait for that.
Any other questions from the commission for Mr. Felder? If you did have a question, come on up, because we need your name for the record, so.
Yeah, my name's Dave Pease, and I have a small orchard at 45 East.
Can you come to the podium?
Yeah, we gotta get- whether you like it or not, we gotta get you on camera.
Yep. Hi, my name's Dave Pease. I have a small orchard. It's listed as 45E. It's next door to 1303 Main Street. And I have a few questions. So the chemicals used for this, the herbicides, are they regulated by the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources? Do you know that?
I know that they're regulated by Mass Deep, as well as the EPA.
Yeah. So you're talking about diquat bromide, is that correct?
Diquat.
Diquat, not bromide, there's no bromide in it?
No, the active ingredient's diquat.
Okay.
No, this one.
So we could use some more information about the chemical compounds that they're trying to use here. You know, possibly some MSDS sheets and some other stuff like that, maybe?
Sure. Yep.
And also, what's the other one, precursor?
Procelicor.
Procelicor? What's that for? That's for the fan wort?
That is going to be for the milfoil.
Yeah. So, are we familiar with, herbicides can cause nutrient and pH imbalances in waterways such as this?
Yes. When the herbicides work to kill, it'll lead to decomposition of these target weeds. That leads to more nutrients being put into the water body. Yes.
Yeah. So have you done any water analysis at this time on the makeup of the milfoil and the other fan wort and stuff like this? Have you guys done any testing already?
No.
Okay. How about, well, we certainly need more information as to the chemical compounds, and I have some other questions, but they would be beyond the scope of this because we don't really have that breakdown yet, and the time frames and everything else. There's been other, I don't know what your success rate is in Connecticut and Rhode Island possibly, but many times herbicides fail to actually control milfoil, and I've read a few different write-ups about it and stuff like that, and in Vermont they've continuously had failure with it, and I think in other parts of Massachusetts there's been a few other applications done which have not really fared that well. So, like I said, we need more information before we can be really informed as to the amount of chemicals and the different things that we're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. It's like someone else would like to approach, sir. Would you like to?
Kurt Roundsville. I own bogs on the west side of the big pond. Diquat is an absolute taboo with ocean spray. No tolerance whatsoever. The Roundup, the glyphosate, it's not Roundup by trade name, but glyphosate that they use, also a taboo. No tolerance whatsoever at harvest. They will not accept my berries.
Do you know what their detection limit is?
0.
Yeah.
Well, you can't get to 0, so
They have no tolerance, period. That's all I've been
Is it
told by
parts per
Ocean.
billion?
That's what Ocean Spray told me, 0 tolerance.
parts per billion, parts per trillion?
They never said any part per billion or part per trillion.
Okay. If you could try and ask that.
And I don't know about the other products that they're gonna pour in there.
Yeah, all right.
And as far as 5 days go, I can't go 5 days without irrigating. No way. my bogs will burn up.
Mm.
And that's like a 3-year deal.
And you're
At
not the
least
only
get
one
them
with that
back.
issue.
And I'm too old to start over again.
Yeah.
What's that?
You're not the only one with that issue.
No, I am not.
Right.
Okay, I guess that's all I had to spout off about.
Okay.
Mr. Ronzo, Mr. Ronzo,
Yeah.
while I have you there,
Yeah.
just, so you've given us a list of 2 that Ocean Spray is saying no.
That's 2 that I
Are there,
know.
okay, I was gonna ask if you knew of others.
I don't know
This
if
might
these
help
are.
inform
The only ones that you
Rick's
can
notes,
use
too.
on bogs is Ocean Spray has a list of what you can use.
Okay.
And if it's not something you can use, they don't want to hear about it, you know, they won't take my berries.
So, Joanne, will you make a note and I'll contact Ocean Spray?
Yeah, please do.
So I owned an environmental engineering company. I was a big contractor. And I tested millions and millions of tons of soil, so I understand all of these chemical compounds and when they break down and they turn into other things and all of that. And that's what I'm interested in, is making sure that we're not putting something in the lakes that's okay for today, but 5 years from now, we're gonna say, gee,
Another month.
that being a cumulative effect.
Just to let you know, I'm not completely opposed to this, but I'm not with these.
I don't think anyone's opposed to it, they just wanna know that it's safe and,
Well, that's right, but I don't want to lose my property, I can't
No.
afford that. You know, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, I can't afford that. No way.
it's not what I heard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, please.
He's gonna go this way, honey. He's gonna take a short walk. He's got a trap.
Hello, I'm Walt Braley, 1189 Main Street. My concerns are the same as Kurt's. I only got 5 acres of bog, that's a big part of my income. The chemicals that he spoke about, Dicot, my guy will reject them also. That's Deacus. They call themselves something else now, Fruit of Gold. They were bought out by them. I've been there all my life. I've seen those ponds. I fought several battles to keep those ponds from being degraded over the years, including the Cogentrix company that was going to suck 3 million gallons of water a day out of there. And other things of that nature. A couple of years ago, down at Buttonwood Park in New Bedford, they tried to get rid of the weeds in the little shallow pond there, and they killed a bunch of fish. How many fish are you gonna kill?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Now, I gotta tell you, since I started in with cranberries down there in 1991, it is always in the back of my mind not to kill any fish. And I've never killed one. You guys come in and hopefully you won't kill any fish. And all the weeds that, assuming that you're successful, all the weeds that you do kill, what happens to them? They just sit there and decay in the water, and that does what? Sucks the oxygen out of the water. I just don't see this. I don't see the need for it. You got recreation on one side. Somebody doesn't want to get their boat propeller caught up in the weeds. Well, that's good. But on the other hand, you have people making a living and who are also have been protecting a pond over and over for 40 years. It bothers me, the idea that you come in and say, we might kill a few fish, but not too many.
Hopefully.
I've never killed one. Dicot, and the idea this is selective, it's not selective. Dicot's not selective, it'll kill anything. Maybe, if you get enough of it. I can't go 5 days without irrigating in July, not possible.
Nope.
What's the effect on tomatoes, apples, peaches, glyphosate, which is Roundup? Glyphosate on peaches, peaches are extremely susceptible to Roundup. If I irrigate that water in, you're saying 5 days, the guidance we got from an experimental station said 8 days. I can't go 8 days on the cranberries, I might go 8 days on the apples and peaches, a lot of tomatoes, but I just think this whole proposal is save me from people with big ideas, really. Thank you.
Mr. Pat, do you want to see if we can get a list from Deacus as well, or whatever Deacus's new name is?
Yes, I would say that Ocean Spray is probably the most stringent of of anybody, but we'll find out.
Okay.
Yep. Could I just add
Thank you,
a
Mr.
couple of
Bailey.
things here?
Yeah, please.
So, I served on the Conservation Commission where I lived in Uxbridge for 3 years, and we had a swimming pond there, and Solitude treated our pond 3 times over a 4-year period. First year, we had milfoil and something else, I forget what it was. The first year, we were successful with the weeds, but they were harvested. And we had a minor fish kill. The second year that we did it, we didn't harvest it, and we had a major fish kill. And the third year that we did it, we don't know if we killed all the fish, and there wasn't a fish kill, but we didn't collect the weeds again, and it was a disaster. It smelled just the eutrophication of the plant material in shallow water, and then people trying to swim were having weed fights, they thought this was fun for a little while. So the city of New Bedford sent us some comments, and one of their comments in here is, does the Acushnet Board of Health have a contingency plan for a fish kill and a budget to deal with a fish kill? And that has not been mentioned to any of us, and I can say that there is no budget for it, and there is no contingency for that. And then the dissolved oxygen, and again, what's the go, no-go? And when does that test happen? And I think it would be conditioned that I would want to be there to trust and verify is the way that would work. And then they're suggesting, have you considered triploid carp?
Have I considered?
Triploid carp, to eat the weeds instead of trying to kill the weeds.
With carp, they're very selective with which weeds they eat. They typically like to eat the native plants before the invasive plants. So carp they're not the magic bullet that really saves it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they wanted to know if there's going to be a pond nutrient study proposed to separate this from the vegetation management proposal. And I agree with them, it's highly recommended to try and identify the nutrients coming into the ponds causing that. And being the assistant health agent, I hear the common claim that it's the cranberry growers pumping nitrogen into the ponds, and talking to the cranberry growers, that's not accurate. So it would be good to find a pound of the cause to apply a pound of the cure, and try and work on that. And maybe there's some grant money available through Buzzards Bay Coalition or somebody to work on that. They were concerned about the minimum requirements for natural heritage and marine fisheries.
Do we want to ask Mr. Brooks if he wants to, did you want to?
Is he here?
Ask
Yeah.
questions?
Oh, I thought
I'm
you
not
left.
here, I'd rather not speak.
Okay.
I gave my comments to Mr. Hannon,
Yeah. Okay.
and they're
Fair
as
enough.
far as we have for now.
Yeah. And the rest is just, their comments is getting the paperwork filled out properly and them knowing everything that's going on in their reservoir, because we don't own it. It's New Bedford's, there's a memorandum of understanding between this town and that city that we can make improvements there, but they have to approve everything. So, and then the other point is, through an internal meeting, I find out that there is no money for this. The money's been spent. It got spent on the improvements.
Oh,
Well, that's good.
So there is no money in the budget for the weed removal. And I found that out today.
for weed removal or?
For the weed treatment, the $35,000 was spent on paving and guardrails and
All right, so.
wood chips, and so there is no money for this project.
This might just be the
Oh,
It could be approved at fall town meeting, if there's a fall town
But
meeting.
it's too late. So I'm curious, who approached who? Did Solitude approach the town? Did the town approach your company? Do you know that?
I don't know that. No.
I approached Solitude.
I don't know.
So,
Sorry, we haven't met.
so my name is Scott Daggett. I am on the Lake Street Improvement Committee. Back about 3 years ago, give you a little bit of background. Back around 3 years ago, when Roger Cabral was selectman here, we had discussed about trying to get Lake Street cleaned up. I'm an avid fisherman. I've fished at that pond since I've been 12, 13 years old, know them very well. And over that time, I have seen the milfoil just get out of control. So I approached Roger Cabral, let's see if we can get something done. Then Roger was no longer selectman, and in comes David Woolner again, and he had heard that I had an interest in trying to get the ponds cleaned up. He contacted me. We formed this committee together with the best interest of trying to take this natural gem that we have in town, try to improve it, make it more enjoyable for everyone, which appears to be the case because I've seen a lot more people using those ponds now more than I ever have. So back about 3 years ago or so, well, actually 2 years ago, David had me, or Mr. Woolner, Selectman Woolner, had me get into contact with various different companies that could do these types of services. I had seen a Channel 5 news report on Solitude in which they had treated a pond out near the Boston area. It was an exclusive pond, and I got the idea of contacting them and see what they could do. So I was the person who initially made contact with Solitude. I've been in contact with various people at Solitude over the years. I've spoken to Mr. Felton a few times. There's a few other people that I've spoken to. And together with the Lake Street Improvement Committee and Solitude, we've been trying to get this thing going for a number of years now.
I appreciate the history, thank you.
Thank you.
May I speak again?
Mr. Pease, sure.
I think, now that I've refreshed my notes here a bit, Lake Cochituate and Natick, there was a study done there, and a one-year program was about $150,000. And this is somewhat old history. You know, I took it off the internet today, but it's been ongoing there, and they've had this problem.
1 second, but there was an Army lab there, and the Army lab discharged a lot of stuff into Lake Cochituate.
Well, that wasn't what that wasn't what this was about, though. It was about milfoil and this other fan laws, which we were supposedly going to treat for, because that lake is used very similar to what the lake is that we have here.
I lived in the area, so I'm
Right.
familiar with the lake.
And, well, everyone else hasn't. And then there was also, let's see. Oh, using the, what is it, the herbivore fish? According to what I took off the internet today, in the Mass General Laws, whatever it is, the sterile fish are not allowed to be used in Massachusetts. That's just what I was able to scan out of my search today. You know, it's possible. I mean, we should maybe look at some other options. You know, there's mechanical harvesting, things of that nature. You know, you said that you've had to do the cleanup before, so you must have treated with chemicals and then mechanically harvested, right?
I recommend the mechanical harvesting,
Yeah.
but it's expensive.
Did you ever do just straight mechanical harvesting?
No, only after we did the treatment.
Right.
But there's disposal costs, dewatering, there's a lot to it.
Right. There's a lot to all of it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. Well, all right, very good.
Thank you.
If I may again.
Mr. Zagat, yes.
So I have a question that I'd like to pose to Mr. Felton. So on the committee, we're, hearing everybody's voice. We want to take everybody's opinion and utilize what everybody, is giving us for information. So if, with alternatives, if we were to do mechanical harvesting. Now, it's always been my understanding that if you go in there and you mechanically harvest these particular weeds, milfoil, you're not going to get it all. And you're going to leave some of it behind. And you're going to break up pieces, and pieces are going to float throughout the rest of the pond, and then you're going to have the chance of regrowth. Number one, how much more expensive would mechanical harvesting be compared to chemical treatment? Number two, Now, let's include the cost, so if you mechanically harvest it, you're apparently going to remove it from the ponds, you're gonna de-water it, and then you're gonna truck it off-site. The other option would be if we treated it chemically, you're gonna kill off the weeds, everything's gonna settle to the bottom, eventually you're gonna have to dredge. So what would the cost comparison be if we killed it off chemically and had to dredge it eventually, or mechanically harvest it and then truck it off, de-water it and then truck it off site? Is there that much of a big cost difference between the two, or is it relatively the same?
There's a big cost difference between hydro raking or mechanical raking and chemical treatments. The mechanical raking is a lot more expensive. And you mentioned dredging. Dredging is a whole monster on itself. It pretty much is a complete reset to the pond. I know that Solitude does not deal with dredging. That's usually environmental engineers and a separate company that we would recommend, but that's extremely expensive, and it comes with a whole other
That would
set of
take
problems.
years of permits, or
Yeah,
Army Corps of
years.
Engineers. It's
Yeah.
just not a,
Yeah. Well, I believe at one point we looked at possibly dredging Tom Smith, because we've had,
Tom Davis.
excuse me, Tom Davis, thank you. Because we have had ideas where,
Tom Smith.
maybe we could put a fountain in there, maybe we can make a skating rink out of it in the wintertime, so we can dredge it down to a depth, get rid of some of the islands that are popping up in there. And I think at one point, I think someone at Solitude had given us a very rough estimate of about $120,000 to get that done, just on that small pond. Does that sound somewhat
To dredge it?
reasonable to you, to dredge it?
Which pond?
So it's the smaller of the 4 ponds. It's
Number 3.
It'd be, is it number 3 or number 4?
So that's the north east pond.
That would be the southeast pond.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, that sounds about right for a pond that size, since that's the smallest of the 4.
That's expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So eventually, I know that dredging is part of the scope of work later on down the road, because primarily we just want to get rid of these weeds. So I guess you could say that if you've got a pond that's, 3 or 4 times bigger, that the cost to dredge would be about 3 or 4 times as much. Is that fair?
I don't want to say that it's going to be exactly like that, since there's just so many moving parts, and I'm not experienced with dredging at all. We don't deal with dredging, but I just know it's an extremely expensive process. It resets the pond, and it's it takes a lot of time with permitting as well. I mean, years.
upland disposal of dredge is very expensive.
Yeah, the disposal was half the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is it likely that if you dredge a pond, would you be affecting any of the potential spawning beds of different fish?
Definitely.
You're affecting everything.
Yeah,
Like he said, it's a reset.
It's a reset.
It resets everything.
Okay. But it is something that we're going to have to address, because eventually when you kill off these weeds, they're going to settle at the bottom. And through the natural cycle of the ponds, as you see it, Tom Davis, it's just going to pile on top of each other eventually.
What's the no action scenario? What's the outcome of no action?
So no action scenario, since we're dealing with this invasive milfoil and disband wort, it will encroach on the pond over time. And it's just the life cycle of every pond. Every pond wants to become a wetland. And what we do is we just try to prolong the life cycle of the pond for aesthetic purposes. People like to use the pond for fishing and water sports and everything. So that's what we're really there for. So if we don't address the problem, it will get worse each year. It'll slowly choke out native plants. That will have a big effect on everything. Yeah.
And one last thing, since we have a representative from the city of New Bedford here, is there any way that they could tell us when the last time they took any action at that pond? They've owned it for over 100 years. Have they done anything to it in that 100-year time frame?
We can ask that question.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Burley?
One more comment about the dredging idea. What do you do with the spoils? Where do they go?
to a landfill. Out of state.
We're down to.
Out of state.
Out of state.
We don't allow upland disposal of dredge.
Did you say Uxbridge?
Definitely not.
If you would,
Jesus Christ, I never get
David Sansucci, 88 Mecca Way. I also share concern about the bogs and everything else, and you mentioned about the fish. I'm wondering about the wildlife. You got frogs, turtles, there's a family of otters on that pond now. You know, what's gonna happen to that? You know, one of my neighbor's dogs goes swimming in the pond, drinking the water. What effect is that gonna have on these animals? You know, I like to go out in the canoe, I'm a recreational person. You can't even canoe on that pond anymore. You go down there right now, you go in the middle of that pond, you reach down. It's everywhere, everywhere. I grew up on that pond, it wasn't like that before. And like it was said, what has New Bedford ever done? I've never seen New Bedford do anything with that pond. You know, it's a disgrace, I think. And I'm more concerned about the wildlife around there, birds and everything else.
Deer.
Got a lot of birds on that pond. And
The deer.
yeah, the deer also.
Deer population.
There's a lot of wildlife in them woods, swan. That's my concern. Thank you.
yeah, that's the problem with a non-native species. It typically doesn't have a native predator or herbivore or whatever it is to eat it, and we have the situation we're in. Anybody else with questions for Mr. Felter? And anybody on the commission?
I have a question. So we got a big concern about Julys and everything else for the bog owners and everything else. Is this anything you could do later in the seasons? Like do it in the winter?
Yeah, yeah.
So the winter, we've never done treatments in the winter for milfoil or fanwort. It's just because they're not up and they won't take in the herbicides.
What's the latest we can do it? Or
The
you can do
latest we could do this, I mean, the later we go past August, the end of August, it will it will decrease the effectiveness of the treatment. And we want the treatment to be as effective as possible because we're paying a lot of money. We want to take care of this problem in one sweep instead of having to do it maybe not half-assed the first time and then over time we're going to just have to keep on coming back and do more and more treatments. We'd like to just do one strong treatment and take care of the problem.
So one of my recommendations when I met out at Lake Street with Scott and Selectman Warner and some other folks was, you had a certain amount of money available for this and you were going to try and treat all of those ponds for that price. And one of my suggestions was take one pond and do the application to that pond and use that as a guide to see what happens.
I agree.
I don't know that it would really hurt to watch that pond for 2 years or a year or whatever everyone thinks is reasonable and move on to the next pond and see what happens rather than just go out and blow this whole thing up and say, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think that happens. I mean, you guys work in our town 3 times. We were warned about fish kills. They really weren't warned about it here, that much as was there maybe. We were told there will be. And the harvesting of what's killed is paramount. It absolutely is. Because the amount of oxygen that's going to be depleted from that much vegetation. I mean, that's like a carpet down there. I've seen milfoil and I was shocked when I looked over the side of that dock. It's like a pine tree forest sticking up out of the water. And there's going to be a major effect on dissolved oxygen. And we're going to wind up with a dead layer of eutrophication in the bottom of that pond. So my suggestion when this goes forward would be do one pond, see what happens, see how it goes. I don't know if it still affects the other ponds for Mr. Roundsville and the other folks that are doing cranberries. But I think one step at a time would be better than going out and banging the whole thing up.
If they keep the gate closed, then they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, you can do that, right?
Yeah.
Well, the city of New Bedford handles that, don't they?
How does the town run that?
The gate.
I don't know about any gates.
There's a big gate valve on
Right.
the property that communicates
Between
Tom
the
Davis and
ponds.
Tom Davis and the
Right,
East Pond are
to-
connected together through
yeah,
a
they're all-
to the
pipe
south.
system to the South
Because
Pond.
we got a call from Mass DOT today asking who owned the culverts between the ponds, so.
We believe the city of New Bedford owns those, but the town of Acushnet has a right to them. We're not sure.
Would make sense, especially if they own the bodies of water, to me. That would
Well, I'm
make
wondering if they
sense.
put them in just to control the erosion of the road, so they could drop, because right now, if you go out there, I believe the gates are closed. The water in the north pond, the
East.
northeast pond is higher than what the south pond is.
Oh,
So, and I wonder if they did that just so that they didn't have the water erosion on the road bed.
And for the record, could we have your name, please?
Excuse me?
Fred Borges,
Fred Borges?
Thank you.
it's
66 Lake Street.
66 Lake Street. And
So,
oh,
so, moving forward, there's still some answers for New Bedford, what they asked. I think that the commission should see the MOU and see what was signed between the city of New Bedford, so that we're not approving something that hasn't been approved by.
Moving forward, I think this should be peer reviewed with every one of these people's concerns
Well, that was
addressed as well.
That was my next statement.
Okay.
But I think, and here's the catch to that, though,
With the
Ryan.
consideration of cranberries, wildlife,
Everything.
pop, or
Everything,
billion,
yes.
million, all that.
No, this says every bell and whistle that could be
Right.
triggered. If there was ever to be a complicated project, this is it. But this is a town project, the fees are being waived, and I would recommend that we use some money from our Wetlands Protection Act fund to finance the peer review. Because otherwise, the selectmen are gonna have to appropriate money, or the Lake Street Committee's gonna have to come up with money. We've got $40-something thousand in our Wetlands Protection Act fund that we haven't touched a dollar of it in ever. And that's what it's there for. If we want to hire an engineer to work for the commission and, not put the burden back on the town, use the Wetlands Protection Act money. And I would recommend, when we get there, that's what we.
I don't know about that. We'll see.
Who's going to pay for it?
Fundraising, grants, I don't know.
We can't get any grants, we don't have a master plan.
Let's work on the master plan.
That'll take longer.
Why can't we ask? the
Well,
select-
that'll be a vote that the commission takes. So, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I'll be recommending that we use some WPA money to bring in a qualified engineer to fact check what Solitude's saying. And maybe has some experience and has seen some other issues, and maybe even Bill, who works for all these cranberry growers from GAF, could be helpful in this situation. So, and maybe we could get an engineer to volunteer, Ryan. Maybe somebody would step up and say, I'll do it pro bono. So, I'll turn over all the rocks.
So, just out of curiosity, in the paperwork here, there's a reference Lake 4, in parentheses, New Bedford Reservoir. Is that just a labeling thing? The whole thing is called Lake 4? Because this, I'm guessing that this project applies to all four ponds, correct? But,
Well, actually,
What?
no, because Tom Davis is excluded from any treatment.
which pond is that?
Tom Davis is the smallest of the four.
Okay.
That would be
I didn't know
the
that.
Southeast.
I didn't know
southeast
that it had
pond.
a name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not many people do know it has a name.
That's because it's not part of the
We think
reservoir.
there's some issues with the butter notifications.
It doesn't have a name because it's not part of the reservoir.
They only notify
The
people.
reservoir is only the north and south pond, it doesn't include the east pond.
No, and it's just,
So
like
this
I
is
said, I
Tom
just,
Davis, this
I don't
is
know
the
if this
east.
is,
I
if
thought
this is
was
an
only the
artifact,
reservoir. I
but it could be
didn't know that.
confusing when you see project description, it just says Lake 4.
There's a lot that's confusing.
But then you get into
They
the
do.
details and it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
But I don't think this is.
Or it's,
the
and then, is the address really North Leonard Street for these as opposed to Lake Street?
Hey, folks, can we have one
Yeah,
meeting?
it could be, sure, it could be, because it is part of the
Okay.
north portion of Leonard Street.
Okay.
It really is.
But I'm
So-
thinking that people within 100 feet of North Leonard Street got notifications, and that not everybody on all of those ponds got notified, because everybody's in a butter to this project if you're treating all of those ponds.
Correct.
And every person every
I
person.
noticed, there's a pretty extensive list, I didn't manage to glance through.
Yeah, but
At 76
it's not as
pages.
extensive as many people that have come by and said, I didn't get any notification, I'm hearing about it from my neighbors.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I'm gonna entertain a motion to continue for more information.
So moved.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second,
To the
Any
July,
fur-
to the July 12th
12th.
meeting.
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, to the July 12th meeting, we'll try to have that in a bigger venue, if at all possible.
Sign up.
Luckily, nobody has to sit
Yeah,
outside,
outside,
but
yeah.
anyway. So, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all. We won't be offended if you leave, because we're gonna move on to other things. I'm not kicking you out, but you're not obligated to stay. Okay, motion to open another public hearing.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Felder.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing, NOI, 352 Main Street, Frank P. Joseph Jr., 352 Main Street, map 11, lot 28, file number is SE001-0584. Notice of intent was filed by Frank P. Joseph Jr., property located at 352 Main Street, map 11, lot 28. The applicant proposes to upgrade the septic system using an Advantex Mode 3B treatment system within the 100-foot buffer zone with bordering vegetated wetland. The applicant is represented by David Fredette of Fredette Engineering Services. Plan name is proposed septic system upgrade dated March 13 of 2023.
Good evening, my name is David Fredette, Fredette Engineering Services. Let me just give these to Jimmy. I got 3 back
Okay,
and 2 on deliverable. Do you want
okay,
these?
sure, yes, I'll take everything, thank you.
And this is a copy of the receipts.
Okay, great,
You have proof of mailing for all of them?
he does.
Now, I'm assuming you've had a chance to look at the drawings, 2 drawings. Yes,
It'd be
no,
best if you presented the drawing, we have 3 new members, they haven't seen that.
they haven't seen it.
No, do you have the drawing with you?
I have my file copy.
Oh, John, you have a drawing?
Site plan sheet. Detail sheet.
I read it well.
Do you need another one, Bob?
So this is. The septic system failure, very difficult.
Please, the floor is yours.
Well, this design began a couple of years ago, and the attempt was made to make it in a conventional system, but the Board of Health dictated the need for non-conventional technology because of the riverfront and because of the watershed for the tributary to the Acushnet River. So, after an attempt to make this happen quicker with a conventional system, I basically failed to get the Concom on board with the first submission that we had. So this is the actual second notice of intent.
The Board of Health. The Board of Health wouldn't approve the first system.
Right, right. So this is a completely new design. On the site plan, you'll note that the bottomless sand filter is completely out of the 50-foot buffer now. The original plan showed it inside the 50-foot buffer, which was going to be a problem. And after some convincing, my client has decided to buy in to the Advantex system. The Advantex system is non-conventional. It has the highest performance in denitrification, and the Board of Health was very happy with the fact that we went that way. So this plan is perhaps the best that we could possibly offer in terms of an upgrade for this property. And I know it's a very, if you look at the detail sheet, it's like very busy. Unfortunately, there's a lot of moving parts to this system. The bottomless sand filter itself is based on the guidance from the state of Rhode Island, DEM. And the DEP has adopted their systems from, I think it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I think this is the kind of thing that we're gonna see more often and more prevalent throughout the next 50 years or so because of the initiatives to move towards non-conventional technologies with denitrification. So I'm just presenting this tonight, but I don't know if you formulated any questions, but I'm willing to answer any questions you might have regarding this design.
So the Board of Health has approved this?
This is an
Talking to
approved
Joe,
plan.
This is
yeah.
all approved, and this is
All
what...
approved. It took, like I said, it took a lot of effort,
Yep.
a lot of delay time, and that's why we initiated the notice of intent.
And it changed location. It was originally on the north side of the structure, right? And now it's on the south? From the
No,
original?
actually, we dug test pits and took samples on both sides of the building. The fact is, there's an aquifer in a Hinkley soil underlying the site. The Hinkley soil is typically very coarse gravels and sands, and the water just buzzes through it. And the water table is probably about 6.5, 7 feet down. So we could not do a perk test, is what I'm saying. We had to take samples and have them and basically have them analyzed for particle size and sieve. And the rate that we were able to get, I thought we would be able to build a conventional system. Unfortunately, because of the riverfront setback, on the south side of the building, we're in that area. On the north side, we're not. However, on the north side, there's not enough room to put a conventional system, the size that we would need. So we're basically stuck on that south side. We were told right from the beginning that we would have to have a non-conventional system because of the denitrification mandatory requirement, and that's what we did.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, clear. Suzie, you don't have any questions or hesitations
No,
about this one?
I think it's good to go, just, no stockpiling in the buffer zone and
No standard conditions?
no refueling, standard conditions. Yep. Erosion control inspection.
Well, you'll note on the site plan, I have a dewatering facility there just in case we have to dewater the trench. Actually, I'm not so sure that we'll have to worry about the bottom of sand filter. We might just make it up above the water table, but I think the tank's gonna be in the water table a little bit, so that'll be dewatering requirement. And that facility is designed to receive that and filter it out before it goes into the wetlands.
Is there any way to bump that back out of the 25-foot buffer zone?
The
If you want
dewatering facility? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Is there room to do that?
We probably could.
If you could. Yeah, that
It would be probably on the south side of the
So it would
bottom.
just be a
of the
little bit
sample.
further south, and that would keep you out of that line. That would be my only recommendation, I guess.
Could probably do that. Well, kind of hoping we don't have to use it if we
Right.
do this in July, but we're not gonna take a chance. It's gonna be put in. You can't start digging and then put the thing in. You have to put that thing in first.
Don't forget Murphy's Law.
Say that again?
Don't forget Murphy's Law.
I know.
If anybody has any questions, I'll entertain a motion to issue a positive order of conditions to this project.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second, yeah.
Any
Can we
further
include-
discussion?
Can we include Ryan's amendment into
Yeah.
the order of conditions?
Yeah, with the.
Locate the dewatering outside the
recommendation.
25-foot
Okay.
buffer zone.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Motion to close that hearing. We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to open the next public hearing, NOI 5 Middlewood Drive, Sean Borges, 5 Middlewood Drive, map 18, lot 71C. The file number is SE001-0585. A notice of intent was filed by Sean Borges for property located at 5 Middlewood Drive, map 18, lot 71C. The applicant proposes to construct a 25-foot by 30-foot addition to an existing dwelling with associated grading and landscaping within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The applicant is represented by Niall Zager of Zenith Consulting Engineers LLC. Plan name is Subsurface Sewage Disposal System, new construction dated June 13 of 2023. Mr. Zager, the floor is yours.
Can I just get the motion to open? I didn't get it.
That motion
You
came
made
from
it?
Heidi, I think, right? No?
Motion to open.
I don't think you made it.
Oh, I thought somebody
I think
made
you
it.
closed.
And then I asked for a motion to open. I thought I heard one.
But we can do it again.
Yeah.
George, can you please do it again? I missed it.
I'll
Heidi?
make a motion.
Okay,
And the second?
Second.
Favor?
sorry.
Thank you. That- okay, keep that. You can have it. You can have it now.
Take it now?
I'll-
$10?
Yeah, you can take it.
Niles?
Excuse me, good evening for the record, Niall Zager from Zenith Consulting Engineers, here before you for an addition to an existing single-family home. So basically what you have before you is it's 24 by 30. Sorry, do you mind if I, I'm just having a hard time. Is it okay if I go off to the side here?
Yeah, the camera.
Can they, okay. So what we have here is we have a wetland in the back corner of the property here, the back northwest corner of the property, and the existing structure here. We are proposing the addition on would be the westerly side of that structure. This is all within an existing cleared area, lawn area. There's going to be very little vegetation taken down. It's all within an existing, there's actually an existing fence here that's part of the removal. We are also, the grades are going to stay almost exactly the same as well. The only thing we're doing is creating a little swale just in order to make sure that the water doesn't just puddle up. It'll actually discharge out and stay away from the building. Part of this proposal that's not really part of the commission's purview, but just so that you're aware, there is a new septic system being proposed that you can see on the plan that's being submitted to the Board of Health. Perk tests were done. We kept it as far away from the resource area as possible on the site. Water table was, how far down was it? It was about 5 feet down, 4 to 5 feet down. So it is a little bit raised, but we were able to meet all the criteria for Title V. For that. And that, again, this will be, or if I believe it has already been approved by the Board of Health, but I will confirm that.
It has.
It has. Okay, thank you. So basically, what you have before you is a proposal for an addition within an existing landscaped area. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at the, excuse me. One other thing I wanted to note is that we're proposing a silt sock around the limit of work where the fencing is being removed. We're staying completely outside the 50-foot buffer, and everything will be loamed and seeded for proper stabilization, once construction is complete. So, be happy to answer any questions.
So my biggest question is, we didn't get a site plan. We don't have anything that shows where the wetlands are, what was delineated, flag numbers, any of that. All we really had to work off of was the septic plan. And for me, looking at it, it looks like the silt sock is actually making quite a bit of use in the buffer zone. And I don't remember the buffer zone being as grassy as maybe you described. It seemed a little more vegetated than that. So I'd like to see a site plan.
When you see-
Flags, we didn't see any flags at the.
So there's flags on the plan right here.
So there's only 2 flags?
Flags on the property.
Yeah, on the property, that's correct. There's actually 3, there's one that's off the property.
Yes.
We had staked out, I believe we had staked out the the addition, as well as the 100-foot buffer zone out in the field as well, so that it was clear as to where that was gonna be.
It just strikes me that one little corner of the addition is what's going into the buffer zone. And then you've got a larger area that looks like it's creating more of a yard space in the 50-foot and 100-foot buffer there, where your silt sock is.
Yes, correct. Yeah, that was only done because of the grading, and we're basically at that existing tree line, so that's why we did that, and we're moving the fencing.
But we don't know what the grading is. You know,
What do you mean? It's the existing, I'm not trying to be.
No, I'm just saying, there's no swale shown.
There's a swale shown right here. That's the grading is right there, that proposed grading right there, that's a swale. So you have a high point here, and we're directing the water around the building.
I don't remember seeing a fence. Did you see a fence?
Yeah,
I
there's
saw
a
a
fence.
fence. You did, yeah?
I thought it was a dog fence.
Old dog pen.
Yeah.
I must be losing it.
That's what it's like, every day for me, so I understand.
Yeah. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took a walk back there, I didn't see any flags, but I didn't go like too deep out.
Yeah, we both went
Even as I
backwards.
walked back there, it wasn't like swamp or wetlands, you know, I mean, there was some vegetation, but it wasn't, and it was well like, away from your project, so.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as far as what vegetation's being removed, I mean, it's all, like I said, it was all within the kind of that existing lawn, not lawn, but like the yard that they've been utilizing with it fenced in. So that's kind of what I was getting at, is that it's just, you know, it's not like we're dealing with like a pristine woodland where we're gonna be going in there and ripping up trees and what have you.
The stakes gave you a good visual of what's going on. too.
Yeah. That's why we staked out the 100-foot buffer and the tree, and you know, in the addition, so that everyone was aware of what was going on.
I just don't want somebody coming back on another project saying we didn't require it here, so, you know, why are you gonna require it there?
As far as what,
You know, just a regular site plan without all the septic stuff on it.
Yeah, no, this, I think this has, I mean, in my opinion, it has everything, but, you know, if you guys have concerns, if the commission has
The one
concerns.
that what's in that lower left quarter is usually its own page.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking, Doug, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what
Yeah.
we're used to seeing, so we didn't get to see it when we were at the site on Saturday, so for instance, what I'm wondering is, how are you marking off the limit of work, for example, and where the yard's gonna be, is that shown here?
Yes, it is, yeah, so this is the limit of work here. This line right here is our silt sock and with the detail provided, which is basically, this is the existing tree line here, and we're basically hugging that. And that's what's encapsulating the limit of work. That can be staked out in the field, as far as the, if this were to get approved, that can get staked out in the field by my office to ensure that that is put in the proper spot. And then the commission would obviously be notified, you know, about that installation and ensure that it was done properly.
What size silt sock is it?
I think I have 12-inch.
Really?
I'm sorry?
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that it, what, the 50-foot mark from
Yes.
this well?
Yeah, it's at its closest point, 50 feet.
Okay.
So the 50-foot buffer is here. It's the closest point, this back northwest corner, is basically at 50 feet. It's like, you know, it shows like 52 feet. And then it pulls away as you come further south, and obviously further away as you come towards the addition. Yeah, so there's a lot of details as far as, because of the septic. But this is your site plan here. I guess I could have put it on a bigger plan, but this is typical for what I've done in the past on other projects, and it's been, you know, but that's typically what we've done.
You know, it certainly helps us when we're at a site visit to have something that looks like that lower left corner.
Understood,
Just
understood.
nice.
No, I'll definitely take that back, and I'll understood that I'll try to make it bigger and clearer for you.
Mr. Borges, the reason I ask these kinds of questions, especially when it comes to no activity zone, is, you know, like, you're 50 feet away, so that, you know, like, but as we get to like 25, we typically ask for some sort of demarcation, whether it's arborvitae or a split rail fence or something like that, just so property owners are not dumping stuff or going into the wetlands.
Sure.
That's
Fully
the basis,
understand.
that's the basis of the
Absolutely.
questions from us. But you're 50 feet away, and that's a little more comfortable.
And sometimes for future buyers, just so that they they don't have visions of grandeur, like they see all these trees they're gonna cut
Okay.
down after they close.
Right.
So,
Oh, God willing, there won't be any future buyers. That's the first thing, so.
That's right.
they might hit the lottery.
Yeah.
Pass along to the.
That's right.
Nina, that's on the way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from Mr. Zager or Mr. Borges? In that case, I will entertain a motion to issue a positive order of conditions for 5 Middlewood Drive.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstaining or opposed? Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you, everyone.
Motion to
Have a good
close
night.
this hearing?
Motion to close.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then follow-up question
Have a good night.
for, not for you, for Pat.
Thank you very much, everyone.
We happen to notice.
Take care.
Property
Oh,
nearby,
yeah, that's right.
some clearing, so I don't know if that's on your radar.
It is,
Okay.
it is.
Yeah. It looked like it was definitely within the,
Going through near map.
Google Earth,
okay.
maybe. huh?
Oh, near map's better.
Especially if
Yeah.
it's going to be, as he had thought, or he was told, a goat corral.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yep.
It'd be a problem for the
Oh,
neighbors and
yes,
a problem
yes,
for
yes.
the resource.
for the resource
Mm.
area.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, so the next issue here, we have a continued public hearing. I guess we'll open it just because I'm gonna read it into the record. So, motion to open,
Motion to open.
and do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Continued public hearing, stormwater, Jose S. Costello, Park Drive and Deep Brook Drive, map 17, lots 66 through 84, map 18, lots 12R, 12S, 18, 18G. Stormwater permit application has been filed by Jose S. Costello for property located at Park Drive and Deep Brook Drive, map 17, lots 66 through 84, map 18, lots 12R, 12S, 18, 18G. The applicant proposes to construct approximately 2,350 feet of roadway with associated drainage and utility systems to serve a 15-lot residential subdivision. The applicant is represented by Jamie Bissonette of Zenith Consulting Engineers LLC. Plan name is Deep Brook Estates, dated October 24 of 2017. Final peer review discussion with Beals and Thomas and Zenith Consulting Engineers LLC. The property owners have been, and the engineers have been informed that we're going to continue this to July 12 due to a lack of quorum, and this follows the same reasoning as the Sincarfa for Lambert Street, Mullen Rule.
So this is gonna require a site visit of the commission again, a presentation by their engineer, and then the dueling banjos of Beals and Thomas and
Zenith.
and Zenith. And then the commission will vote on whether or not to issue the variance. And it'll be
That presentation will take place here, right?
here,
Okay.
yep, on the 12th.
I just don't,
Unless we have it at the COA building, right? If we have.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I
As
don't know,
long as
based
it-
on how many
Yeah.
people showed up tonight for
Maybe,
Yeah,
the
maybe
reservoirs,
not.
I don't think we need to
Okay.
You want to
to
have here?
inconvenience ourselves or Heather.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Especially if the
trying
town
to
doesn't
get
want
the
to pay
COA.
overtime and do it either.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, so hopefully it'll be here, but it'll, yeah, and the presentation will happen that night by the engineers
Yeah.
from both sides.
motion to continue to July 12th for more information.
And do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's continued. Next, and this is not a hearing, so it's now written as such, Stormwater Deterra Development, LLC, Bradford Street, map 15, lot 482. A stormwater permit application has been filed by Deterra Development for property located at Bradford Street, map 15, lot 482. The project description is for 4 new single-family dwellings on a private way, Bradford Street, with a stormwater drainage basin. Stormwater drainage basin accounts for 3 previously built single-family dwellings and Bradford Street roadway improvements. The applicant is represented by Jamie Bissonette of Zenith Consulting Engineers, LLC. Plan name is Stormwater Permit Plan dated March 8, 2023, peer review pending.
So peer review came out from GAF. You folks all have a copy of it. And
I don't think I got it.
I dropped one on everybody's
Oh,
desk tonight.
I still didn't get it.
And unfortunately, it turns out that nothing's easy, and there's some substantial comments out there for that, and one of them is that the soils don't lend themselves to infiltration, similar to wing lanes, so he's saying that there should be an infiltration test to make sure the basins are gonna drain and all of that stuff. Joanne sent the peer review off to Zenith, and she asked Zenith to respond as quickly as possible so that we could wrap this up on the 12th. Easier to build his houses. and keep his crew working. There's nothing here that's unsurmountable or, ridiculously expensive. Just, Bill wants to know that the water's gonna drain properly, so. And this will go as fast as Zenith can respond.
Do you have a digital copy of that, Joanne?
She's got electronically.
Yeah. I mean, if I could have access to the copy machine, I could make you one, but there's a different code over here.
Don't you have a copy? I made.
Over here? There's no code on it?
I made a whole bunch of copies of the GAF. Oh, you know what I did? You told me you emailed it to the members, so I only made it for the reason.
Did you email it?
I believe I did.
I don't think you got it.
No?
I didn't get that one.
No, maybe I didn't.
No, we're having a lot of problems with our email.
You guys wanna take a look at it?
No, I don't, it's continued.
She'll send it to you
I'll look at
tomorrow.
it before the next
We'll
meeting.
send it out tomorrow. I just,
You're here on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, did you have any questions, comments, or?
I just want to know.
Yeah.
assume the position.
My name's Alex Gentleman. I live at 16 Belanger Street. I've been trying to get hold of Mr. Hannon since January. Since Deterra built the 3 houses that are currently there, my backyard fills up with between 6 and 8 inches of water every time it rains, because their yards are 4+ inches higher than mine. You can look under my back fence, and the newest house they put in just regraded the yard even higher. So now all the water washes into my backyard and into my garage.
And he's
I've been in the house for almost 6 years, and I haven't had this issue until this year.
So I have been up there 4 times since I got the initial complaint. And I've called the phone number I was left and never gotten any phone calls back. Joanne can attest to that. I did bump into a woman that lives on Belanger that ironically is a NIPD's inspector for MassDOT. And she had 3 pumps in her backyard, and she's pumping water out of her backyard as well. When Deterra built those 3 houses, he raised those grades there. And Jim Merritt issued permits for those 3 houses without going through stormwater. Historically, the water drained from his house towards where the new Bradford Street is.
Yeah.
And because Deterra built those up, the water's now stuck behind their houses. We asked that this be addressed in the peer review. And Jeff Deterra had been in and said that he was going to build this to accommodate those 3 houses, the new houses, and alleviate that flooding problem. I don't know that really shows up here. So I'm glad you came in, but
having living there, I mean, I'm there every day. He's working on developing the other side of the road.
Yes.
He's got that lot cleared. He's getting ready to start putting foundations and stuff in over there. The neighbor behind me, who's it's going to directly affect, just put in a pool where the water's used to drain.
Yeah.
And I tried to give him a heads up, say, hey, I'm trying to get this resolved. I didn't want to have him have an issue with his pool. I'm not trying to start a war with my neighbors. I got to live there.
Yeah, but it needs to be right.
Yes.
Right.
And
that's the point.
And I've had my wife contact you and send you pictures because I can't always.
And I go out, but I did go out there 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Every time there's a bad rainstorm, I go out and I go look around.
And I mean, obviously not this morning because I was trying to sleep, but the last storm I have pictures from my garage where the backyard is starting to fill up again. And I'm not trying to be that pesky neighbor. I can't have my yard fill up and my garage fill up with water every time it rains.
So
that work was done well.
that mitigation needs to be in whatever Zenith is drawing up for.
It needs to fit into
the rest of this project.
Yeah.
Make it right.
Sure, yeah.
This was when Jim Merritt was having his hip replaced. So the Deterra brothers took it on themselves to build the house out there before they even had building permits. The foundation went in, all these things went in, and Jim Merritt came back after the house was basically up.
And still signed off on it?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And they've trapped all this water in there in the packets. He has a genuine complaint. It's absolutely real.
Yeah, and I mean every spring it's gonna fill up my backyard. Granted, it's not an issue right now because it's relatively dry, but when the ground's frozen or anything, we get the melting of the snow.
Or a 2-inch rainstorm.
Yeah. I mean, this spring was relatively mild, and I guess went out there with my boots, took my tape measure and stuck it in the water and took pictures, and I had 6 inches of water in my backyard.
There's 3 houses with pumps behind their houses.
Yeah.
All behind the last 2 houses built.
Should be part of the condition.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
make sure that's in whatever these engineering plans are for the rest of that development.
Yep.
Get
And
that water away from
just,
you.
I don't know if it has any effect on this, but the 2 houses behind me that are gonna be directly affected with this are planning on putting in, new fencing.
Yes.
So that's all gonna be stuff that's gonna be affected by this. So,
There's a couple of lot line disputes out there, and some fences are gonna come down, and some things are gonna move, and new fences are gonna go up.
yeah, and I've spoke with the neighbor behind me, because I had, when they were getting everything built, the guy who lives on, I believe it's Pembroke is his address, right on the corner. He advised me to get my lot surveyed, which I did.
Mr. Marinelli?
Oh, yes, how did you know?
Believe me.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Frequent flyer. He's
Anyway.
right, though.
Well.
I mean, he's right about a lot of his complaints, but he's wrong. Because what his real gripe is he's encroached on that property.
Yeah, and
And he knew it was gonna be found out when it got sold and surveyed, so he did everything he could to stop that from happening, so that he didn't have to take down his encroachments.
And that's not my issue, I'm trying to stay as
Right.
out of that as
Yeah.
best I
But it's
can.
become my issue. I'm
Yes.
knee deep from all of those people on
Yep.
that street.
And I've had my lot surveyed. I have, all the pins are still in the corners of the lot. I told my neighbors where they are. There is a fence that runs across my backyard that, to my knowledge, is not my fence. Because the way I understand it is the beautiful side of the fence has to face your neighbor.
Mhm.
I don't know if they put the fence up backwards when the junkyard was there or not. Doesn't matter, because they've already approached me about, I've got some firewood stacked back there that I'm gonna have to move. Okay, not a big deal. I'll get on it.
Yep.
But
So I'll make sure that when I talk to our peer review engineer, that jumps onto the radar screen.
all right, and
But Jeff DeTerra did come in and see me and say that he was willing to take care of it.
yeah.
So we'll build that in and,
But I understand willing to, coming in and saying that, but that I don't see anything getting done.
Talking
And it's,
cheap.
yeah, and it's been, I believe I reached out to you January 9th and you were responsive for the first few emails, and then here, there, translation got lost. I work in the marine business, so I'm busy this time of year, and I haven't been able to get a hold of you because I know you have Board of Health second half of the day, so.
yep. But I did follow up, I did call people, I took pictures, I did.
All right.
Is there access for a machine to get in there? If there,
Yeah, if you give me a heads up, I can move my car. I got a driveway that can get right back.
oh, all right, yeah, that's, I didn't know.
I mean, other than that, it's gonna be
There's-
coming through
There's
the
more
other
to
side.
it. There's lot line disputes and
Yeah.
hard feelings, and people need insurance to go on your property and blah, 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 blah.
All the stuff that's out of our jurisdiction?
Correct.
Pat, does this need to be a site visit for the rest of the commission, the new members?
Yes,
Mhm.
yep, this is a site visit as well.
So can we have your permission to check that area out when we do go to that site visit?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind giving me a
It'll be on July
phone
8th.
call, and I'll make sure I'm there.
And because there seemed to be a little bit of a phone number issue, have we verified that the number you have
Yeah,
is
let's
accurate?
check, because I know
I
we've
can-
made calls.
Well,
yeah.
rather than give it on TV, why don't you?
Right,
write it
yeah.
down?
Right, yeah. Yeah, I wasn't gonna have you do that.
But it'll be on July 8th. I can get your
Okay.
email address, and when we make the schedule of where they go for their different stops, I'll give you an estimated arrival time. It'll definitely be on the 8th in the morning.
Okay. Yeah, I
So
can.
if you want to write something down for me.
6 a.m. We'll be there.
Why so
6 a.m.
late?
start.
Hey, why so late?
Maybe you will.
Why so ladies?
Chocolate chip pancakes,
I'll be in bed still while you guys are out there.
8675309.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
Are you?
Things are breaking.
Yeah, no, that's an easy one, yeah.
You have the number with us? Yeah, 8675309. The young people don't get it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's, I think, 65,000.
That's right.
They're old, Pat.
All righty. So this most likely end up on the agenda for June, for July 12th.
Yes.
Yeah, it's gonna be long.
We've asked Zena to wrap this up so we can get all of
Thank
these
you.
things on the agenda.
Yeah, I know Alex, yep, 6:03.
So
Is
you
that a
need a
one?
motion to continue
Yes.
to
Okay.
the July 12th meeting?
And
Well, this one is not a hearing. This
Oh,
is
it's not a
just
hearing.
Yeah.
informational.
So,
Yeah.
R?
097.
Just a heads up that
Okay.
it's gonna be on the agenda.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, if not, I'll call you and get more information if I need it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for that part of the agenda. On to discussion, agent updates. Anything?
Nothing's any better. That's the update. It's spiraling.
Anything
It
good
really
going
is.
on yesterday, Pat?
Yesterday?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was just curious.
I don't know.
Cushing Lane?
Oh, demobilized again.
Oh,
I heard a police call.
Yeah, so Cushing Lane, this is crazy, and this is part of the update. So as you know, we've been having internal meetings with the department heads and town administrator about all these solar fields. And they developed a spreadsheet of who has their bonds in place, who has building permits, who's been through conservation, when their special permits expire for their solar field projects. And everyone's been working on the premise that their permits all expire after 2 years. And recently there was a planning board meeting where 5 projects were up for renewal for their special permits. 3 of them were renewed, even though they haven't started any work. And then 2 others were turned down because they hadn't started any work. And they refused to renew them. And one of them was Mendel Road, the poor guy that was late and all of that stuff. So yesterday, I got contacted by one of my fellow employees and said, you need to read this after everything we've been doing. And it turns out that when the solar bylaw was written, the 2-year expiration was omitted. There's nothing in there. And Mass General Law says that your special permits expire after 3 years. So we just spent 3 months of internal meetings. And the planning board just had a 2.5-hour meeting where they didn't renew permits for people that didn't even need a renewal. They're still in play for another year.
Right.
It's just a sideshow. It's just an absolute sideshow of what's going on with this stuff. Copy machines don't work, printers don't work. I got an email today that you sent me on May 17th from Derek Hill asking about the peer review and who would the companies be.
Yeah.
I just saw that email today, and I thought that he just never got back to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to get back to him now.
Yeah.
But Joanne's missing emails. I'm missing emails.
Pam, I think Levante too,
Yeah.
she has a lot of email problems.
So it is what it is, but it's not getting any easier, and we're getting further behind on minutes.
Oh my. I don't
Joanne's
know.
further behind on paperwork, and they raised everybody to a senior clerk to give them all the same pay. So basically, the commission wanting to give Joanne a raise got everybody else a raise but Joanne. Everybody's now making what Joanne makes, whether they worked here 1 year or 4 years or 40 years.
Well, after the 3rd, they had to be at step 3 to move up to my.
But that was everybody.
Yeah, pretty much, except the new
It's just-
hire in the building department, yeah.
I thought we buried this whole thing with her raise
It's maddening.
many meetings ago.
We thought we had to.
You didn't.
Because, again, this
Yeah.
is a source of funds that has nothing to do with taxation.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've approved it, and we
Right.
thought,
Right, so I thought, my understanding was our decision was our decision at that time, that
Still needs to be approved by the selectmen, though, does it not?
Right.
And they all said that, I mean, 2 of them
I
came
mean,
to our
that's
meeting.
the bottom
Yeah.
line, right?
and that was how I had phrased it in the letter, and because that's what Mass General Law says, it needs to be, whatever the governing body is for the municipality. So that's how I phrased the letter and approached it, and that's who that's who the
And it's,
recipients were.
Yeah.
And then from there, it was,
Yes.
we thought it was approved, because we have at least 2 of our 3 selectmen.
and it's the commission's decision on the use of that money, not the town administrator, not the selectmen, it's the commission.
It has to be brought to them,
Yeah.
and say, this is
Yeah.
what we like.
Well, a majority of our selectmen came to a meeting and said we support getting her raise.
Yes.
And I don't know if that was 7 months ago now, or
It was a couple, yeah.
how long, but
Yeah, so.
everybody got
This-
raised but her.
And this fiscal year is about to end, I don't know if I don't know how there'll be any change in attitude on July 1st.
Well, I'm gonna reach out to Selectman Hinckley. I had spoken to him a few times, and I'm gonna ask him for a follow-up. And if not, I can,
Have we done a follow-up?
I was gonna reach out to MACC too and just find out, if there's any information out there about what happens if you have this roadblock that we're experiencing. The other commission, you voted. The money's there, 50% of it should be used, can be used.
MAC doesn't make the rules, they're not gonna have
No,
any say
but
in that.
that's what, I was told to reach out to and find out, does
Yeah, but
any
they
other
might have dealt
solution?
with a similar
Right,
experience
that's
in a
what
different
they-
town.
right,
Frame of
exactly.
reference.
Give you some ideas
Right,
or whatever to do.
yeah.
Well, regardless, it should be retro to when the commission voted to do that, so.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So follow-up, yes, but I kept it quiet because I was asked, let's, they wanted to work on it behind the scenes.
Right, I
So-
think that what their goal was to move the other employees here that were clerks to senior clerks, but is there gonna be more discussion about the senior clerks that have been here the 20, 34 years like I
I
have?
was told it was going to be part of the process.
Administrative
Right, okay.
assistant.
So let's see if that's part of the process.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of work going on in that office. I don't even know how to proceed to get caught up, Bob. I mean, April 12th minutes. And it took me weeks. And the time that I have is so limited to even open it up, to start the process, there's so much other just paperwork in there.
We just had a week and a half
To
of
do.
people coming in nonstop from
It's,
Lake Street.
Yeah, it's,
Right.
it's Lake Street, it's Mr. Decker, it's, these people, it's everything. 4 hours, it's just a blink of an eye. I can't even do my regular budget work, my typing up forms.
And again, Bob, as you mentioned, the deal
I
was,
don't
she
know.
was gonna be a full-time.
Full-time.
Yeah,
And that hasn't happened.
That was discussed.
stressed
mentioned.
out.
I don't know if promised is the right word, but it was 2 years ago.
We burned dollars to save pennies.
We're going backwards,
It's
not
not
forwards.
efficient.
No.
and it's even hard for me not to have the minutes in front of me to relate back, like Pat said, saying, hello, where's your minutes from April? I'm Pat, there's no minutes from April. I don't even have them. So we're looking through my notes to just try to make heads or tails of where I'm at and what we've discussed and what decisions you've made.
We were trying to find
Very
out
difficult.
about the quorums for the meetings, on who missed meetings. So we
Yeah.
went to the minutes, and she's like, I don't have those minutes, so we had to watch the meeting.
Yeah,
I just think it's horrible. Most people know in their lives, at their job, their careers, their financial future with their companies or whoever they represent or work for, their financial futures.
Someone else
She
vote
has
for
no
us.
idea. In Lingo for 2 years, I think it's very unfair to her.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
30 years.
And you expect her to do her work day in and day out.
She just stops.
And she
doing her
does.
work.
And she does, and it's relentless, as she states. I think talk is cheap. I think it's time for action. I don't think it's very fair to her. And I know if it was one of us, and it was to affect our family, we would feel the same way. And that's the way I feel, and that's the way I express that. I think we need to go after what we feel as a committee is right for what she deserves.
And we have.
Let me,
Yeah.
let's reach out again. I'll reach out to Mr. Hinckley and maybe, like you said, there's still progress happening, progression.
I would reach
I don't
out to
know.
the chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Chairman, okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Gaspar too,
Oh, yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to all three of them for an
I'm
update.
gonna have a talk with him as well.
Yeah, an update.
Yeah.
There's always,
Maybe there's some progression where, they
I hope
just.
so.
whenever Kevin's the chairman, a lot more things get done.
It's true.
It's true.
It is.
It's
It
absolutely
is
true.
But you gotta be a squeaky wheel to get greased.
And let's face it, without her, we're dead in the water.
Of
Yeah,
course
I'm
we
trying
are.
to be polite about it,
100%.
and I'm trying to
Yep.
respect everybody, and I think, there's been some discussions of, and I think
Well,
the end of the year, maybe progression, and maybe like Bob said, there's still some discussion that needs to be had, so.
Mhm. Okay.
But thank you again for your support.
Well, yeah, shouldn't be this complicated. It's arduous. 3 or 4 meetings ago, there was an item on the agenda about open meeting law violation, and you expressed surprise that it hadn't been sent to us. And I haven't seen anything since.
And I told Pam, wasn't interested in it. So that's over with.
Oh, this was something you had filed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She said, do you want to follow up? And I said, no. I said, I'm good.
Okay. Now, was this something that the Attorney General's office would have sent to us?
No.
Because that's where.
No, it
this
should have been
usually
sent to you by
filed.
Pam.
Oh, that gets sent, not by the Attorney General's office, there's
No,
those
so I
things
found an
are
open
usually
meeting
filed.
violation about the vote on Costello when it wasn't on the agenda to take that vote.
Okay.
And it goes to you, so there was an email to you, which probably wound up in the abyss. Yep, welcome to our email system. And it went to Pam. And after the second meeting, Pam said, have they addressed the open meeting violation? I said, no, I think everybody understands what it was, and there's no need to, to go any further with it. Because if it doesn't get addressed by the first meeting, you have the opportunity to complain to the Attorney General's office, and then they'll send a letter saying you have to address it. But I think everybody understood that it needs to be on the agenda, and that was that.
Okay.
Water over the dam.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else with business for the commission? Any other questions, comments?
I have one question. I know that Pat was going to tell me he's putting some paperwork together.
Yeah, so I'm making a binder for these three folks. And I was talking to Jim, and I told him, you don't need the whole 160 pages of the Wetlands Protection Act, because the work that we do probably deals with the first 20 pages. So I'll make you a binder of that, stormwater handbook, the stormwater regulation, and the stormwater bylaw. And they'll be able to look at that stuff. And then I was going to add a 15-minute piece to our upcoming agendas to explain some of the acronyms of, BVW, ILSF, and some of the myths that engineers like to come in and tell us, so that when they represent something, you can open up the book and say, well, actually, 310 CMR 10.5 says this. It doesn't really say what you just said. So, and it'd be very helpful to them not to feel overwhelmed if they got a 150-page document. They've just got 15. We did get an email today that Dan, so Dan,
Gilmore.
Dan Gilmore, the section chief for wetlands for our region, has retired. And there's a new lady who's the section chief, and they're offering some training stuff going on. We'll probably take advantage of some of that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's been mentioned yet.
MACC.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there are 8 sections or sessions for fundamentals for conservation commissioners, and we've got the Wetlands Protection Act money to pay for that for year 3 to attend.
Actually, just for being appointed, they have a 1-year free subscription to all of their online stuff.
Okay.
So I needed to wait for their appointments. I have the document ready to go. They'll get signed up. They'll be able to go online. We do have 2 of the MAC training manuals in the office for beginners and intermediates. So we'll break some of that out and get everybody up to speed.
It's good to have. Yeah.
I mean, Tristan's, got a construction license and very experienced, and Jim's very experienced, and Doug's worked in a lot of other paving business and landscaping and excavation, so there's some basic knowledge there.
All right. Oh, good.
It's all good.
Okay. No further business. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 12th, 6 p.m. right here. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, 7:44 p.m.